Picture this. You're standing backstage or maybe sitting in your car right before a massive pitch.
Oh yeah, the classic pregame panic.
Exactly. Your heart is hammering against your ribs, your palms are sweating, and you're desperately reciting that ultimate cliche. Just believe in yourself. You've got this.
Right, like that's gonna magically fix everything.
I mean, you've probably been given that advice a million times. It's slapped on motivational posters. It's the climax of every sports movie. But let's be totally honest with each other here. If it were really that easy,
This is not.
right, if belief was just like a switch you could flip in your brain by repeating a catchphrase, wouldn't we all be walking around completely bulletproof? I mean, you would never second-guess a decision or lie awake at night wondering if you're an imposter.
Yeah, the gap between knowing you should believe in yourself and actually experiencing that state is, it's massive. Because the problem isn't that we lack the desire for confidence, it's that we fundamentally misunderstand what confidence actually is. We treat it like a feeling that should magically arrive, rather than, a structure that has to be engineered.
And that is the exact mission of today's deep dive. We're going to decode the actual architecture of confidence. And to do that, we're working off a really fascinating paper titled The Layers of Belief: Why Confidence Isn't What You Think It Is.
By Julie Hatfield Still, right?
Yes, Julie Hatfield Still. She's the president and founder of Beyond the Game Alliance and a director of education and leadership curriculum. Okay, let's unpack this. Telling someone to just be confident when their nervous system is in full-blown panic mode is, well, it's like telling someone to just speak fluent French.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, without ever teaching them the vocabulary or the grammar. You can't just command fluency into existence. You have to build it.
Yeah, and Hatfield Still's core argument rests on a total paradigm shift here. She says belief is not a binary trait.
It's not just you have it or you don't.
Exactly. It's not a genetic lottery where you're either born with this unshakable swagger or you aren't. It is constructed layer by layer. And the reason elite athletes, seasoned executives, and everyday people all struggle with imposter syndrome is that they get stranded on the very first layer.
They think they've hit the finish line, but they barely started.
Precisely. They mistakenly think they're done.
Yeah, so we should probably move quickly through this shallow end because I know our listeners have been there. Hatfield still calls this layer one, which is surface-level belief.
The realm of positive self-talk.
Right, reciting the script perfectly. You look in the mirror, you say the words. But here is the critical failure point I really want to dig into. If our brains cognitively know the right words, why do our bodies physically tighten up? Like, why does our throat close up the second the stakes get high?
Well, what's fascinating here is the severe disconnect between cognitive language and physiological truth. At the surface level, belief is purely external. It's learned language.
Just words.
Yeah, just words. You are essentially offering your nervous system a PR statement, but your amygdala...
The threat detection center, right?
Exactly, the threat detection center of your brain. It doesn't read PR statements. It reads your heart rate, your breathing, and your historical data. So saying I am confident while your body is literally flooded with cortisol creates this massive cognitive dissonance.
Oh, wow, so it backfires.
It completely backfires. Your brain registers the mismatch between the slogan and your physical reality, and it actually increases its alarm state.
Because you're essentially lying to yourself,
Yeah.
and your body knows it.
Precisely the opposite of what you want to achieve. And because the internal slogan doesn't feel real, human nature dictates an immediate pivot. We instinctively look outward.
We want proof.
Right, we start frantically scanning our environment for proof to validate those empty words, which drags us directly into the second stage of her framework, which is situational belief.
Oh, let's talk about situational belief, because this one is incredibly deceptive. I mean, it masquerades as genuine confidence. This is when your internal state is entirely hijacked by your external circumstances.
You're riding the wave of the room.
Yeah, like you just had an amazing practice.
Yeah.
Or you're giving a presentation, the client is nodding enthusiastically, the slides are flawless, and suddenly you feel unstoppable. You feel completely free.
Well, sure, it feels fantastic because the environment is feeding you a continuous loop of positive data, so your brain relaxes. But the problem, as Hatfield still points out, is the extreme fragility of this state. The absolute second the environment stops clapping,
Right.
the belief evaporates.
That's a tough question from a client. A blown tire on your commute. A strikeout in the first inning.
And instantly your body tightens, doubt floods back in, and you start overthinking your mechanics instead of just executing, because your belief was never in yourself.
It was outsourced.
Yes, outsourced to the situation.
It really reminds me of A fair-weather sports fan. You know the type.
Oh, absolutely.
They're covered in face paint, screaming from the bleachers, high-fiving everyone, but only when the team is up by 20 points. The moment the opponent goes on a run, that same fan takes off the jersey, starts booing and mutters, "I knew we were going to choke."
Yep, they turn on you instantly.
Because they don't actually have any loyalty to the team. They just enjoy the dopamine hit of winning.
Yeah.
And Hatfield still uses a really stark word for this. She says, this isn't belief at all, it's dependency.
Dependency is the perfect descriptor. I mean, think about what it means to be dependent. It implies a total surrender of control. If your internal stability requires a perfectly agreeable environment,
Which never happens.
right, but if you need the umpire to call a good game, or the crowd to cheer, or the first shot to go in, you are effectively a hostage to your surroundings. You're giving your agency away to factors you cannot control.
And nobody wants to navigate their career, or their life really, as a hostage. So how do we break the dependency? Because logically, we all know we can't control the environment.
Well, Hatfield still argues that escaping this trap requires reversing the standard order of operations. We have to completely flip the relationship between feeling and acting.
And this is the massive aha moment in the paper for me.
Yeah.
It's the backwards logic that trips up almost everyone. We tell ourselves, once I feel confident, then I will play confidently.
We treat the emotion as the prerequisite for the behavior.
Exactly.
But this raises an important question. How long are you willing to wait? Because human beings are biologically wired to avoid discomfort. If you wait until the anxiety naturally dissipates, until the situational proof perfectly aligns and you finally feel ready, well, you will stay paralyzed at the surface forever.
The perfect moment is never going to come.
The perfect, comfortable moment is a myth. The paradigm shift here is recognizing that belief is forged in the fire of uncertainty. It's built in the doing.
Which moves us into layer 3, right? Embodied belief. This is where things finally get actionable. This layer is where belief stops being a passive feeling you just wait for, and it becomes a behavior you actively choose. It's not about how you act when the client is nodding. It's about how you conduct yourself specifically when things are falling apart.
It's behavioral activation. You are no longer waiting for the emotion to give you permission to move. And Hatfield still provides some highly specific examples from the sports world that beautifully illustrate this.
I love these examples because they're just so vivid. Embodied belief is the athlete who makes a humiliating, crucial error, and on the very next play, they audibly call for the ball.
Yes.
It's the batter who strikes out looking, feels the frustration, but in their next at-bat, they step into the box with an aggressive, attacking posture. Or, in the business world, it's maintaining a steady, authoritative voice in a board meeting, even when the project is hemorrhaging money.
And notice the internal state of the people in those examples. The batter who just struck out doesn't magically feel a warm, fuzzy sense of invincibility.
No, they're probably terrified.
They're likely furious or anxious or embarrassed, but they aren't negotiating with those emotions. They aren't waiting for the confident feeling to return before they step into the box. They are choosing the posture, the volume, and the action of a confident person.
They act first. That is the crucial takeaway here. Confidence is built through action, not before it. You act, and the belief eventually catches up to the behavior.
The behavior basically paves the road for the emotion to travel on. When you take the action despite the fear, your brain observes your behavior and updates its internal state. It essentially says, well, we are calling for the ball, so we must be capable of handling it.
Okay, I love the logic of this. Act first. It sounds great. But I want to push back and ground this in reality for the listener. Let's say I am in that terrifying moment. My situational belief is totally shattered. My surface-level affirmations have failed. My heart rate is at 140 beats per minute. How am I supposed to just magically summon the courage to take bold, embodied action when my internal tank is completely empty?
It's a huge leap.
Right. Telling me to just act confident feels dangerously close to telling me to just be confident. It feels like there's a missing step.
Well, I wouldn't call it a missing step, but rather a hidden mechanism that her framework explicitly addresses. Because you're right, going from zero internal belief straight into bold action is a daunting leap. But you don't have to fabricate that courage out of thin air.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Hatfield still introduces a concept that bridges this exact gap, and she calls it borrowed belief.
Yes, borrowed belief is the structural bridge between paralysis and embodied belief. When you're standing on the edge, utterly lacking certainty in your own abilities, you can borrow it from external sources. You lean on the conviction of others until you can generate your own.
So walk us through the mechanics of that. How do you borrow belief without it just feeling like another form of imposter syndrome, like you're just faking it again?
Because it's not about faking it. It's about leveraging a trusted perspective. You borrow belief from a coach who sees a higher ceiling for you than you can currently perceive. Or you borrow it from a teammate who deliberately passes you the ball in the final seconds because they know you can hit the shot.
Or even yourself, right?
Exactly. Brilliantly, you can borrow it from a past version of yourself. Looking back at a historical moment where you survived a similarly high-stakes trial, you aren't pretending to be someone else. You are temporarily relying on their data because your own data is currently corrupted by fear.
So if my manager assigns me to lead the most important account at the firm and I am secretly terrified, I don't necessarily have to believe I am a genius right then. I just have to believe that my manager isn't stupid.
That is a highly effective way to frame it.
I trust their judgment more than I trust my own panic.
Yes. And the text makes a vital point here. Utilizing borrowed belief is not a weakness or a crutch. It's a necessary tool.
But the author includes a massive caveat here, right?
Yep.
There are terms and conditions to this loan.
Absolutely. Borrowed belief comes with immense responsibility. A lot of people misinterpret this concept. They think borrowing a mentor's belief means they get to wrap themselves in it like a cozy blanket and just sit there feeling safe. But Hatfield Still is clear. You borrow belief specifically so you can act on it.
Yeah, let's ditch the standard analogies here.
Yeah.
It's not like borrowing money to buy a car. I like to think of it more like pouring concrete for a massive skyscraper.
Oh, I like that.
When the concrete is wet, it has zero structural integrity on its own. I mean, it would just collapse. So construction crews use wooden or metal framework.
Scaffolding.
Scaffolding, exactly, to hold the concrete in place. That scaffolding is borrowed belief. It holds the structure up. But you still have to pour the concrete.
Right.
You still have to do the heavy lifting of taking the action. You use the manager's trust or the coach's validation as the scaffolding to force yourself to take those uncomfortable embodied actions we discussed in Layer 3.
I think that scaffolding analogy captures the essence perfectly. The external belief holds you upright, but the repeated actions, the pouring of the concrete, are what eventually cure. You take the action with shaking hands, and if you use that scaffolding enough times and take enough terrifying actions fueled by borrowed certainty, a profound shift occurs.
The concrete sets.
The concrete sets. The belief stops being borrowed. The debt is paid, the scaffolding is removed, and the structural integrity is entirely yours. You now own the asset. Which brings us to the deepest and final layer in Hatfield Still's architecture, Layer 4.
Anchored belief. I mean, just the name itself sounds immovable.
It is the bedrock. At this ultimate level, belief undergoes a fundamental transformation. It is no longer tethered to outcomes, it isn't situational, and importantly, it is no longer something you have to consciously force yourself to embody through sheer willpower every single time. It becomes permanently anchored to your identity.
It stops being something you do and becomes something you are.
Exactly. It transcends the external environment completely.
The source text gives us the internal monologues that define anchored belief, and they are strikingly different from Layer 1. It's no longer, I hope I win, or even, I am going to crush this presentation. The language shifts from outcome to identity. It sounds like, I am someone who competes fully. I am someone who shows up no matter what. I am someone who doesn't back down from complexity.
And notice how those statements are entirely immune to failure. When your belief is anchored in the identity of being someone who shows up, a brutal strikeout or a lost client doesn't destroy your confidence. Why? Because the failure doesn't invalidate your identity.
You still showed up.
You still showed up, you still competed fully, you separate the external outcome from your core self.
You know, a lot of self-help gurus use the metaphor of a thermometer versus a thermostat here, but I actually think that falls a bit short of what Hatfield Still is describing. A thermostat just changes the room's temperature. Anchored belief is more like the gyroscope inside a massive ship.
Gyroscope, right.
Yeah, because when a hurricane hits, the ship is going to pitch violently. The waves, the external circumstances, they're chaotic. But the gyroscope inside spins independently of the storm, maintaining the ship's orientation. It doesn't deny that the storm exists. It just refuses to let the storm dictate its axis. You stop waking up and asking the environment, do I feel confident today? You rely on the gyroscope. You decide, this is my axis. This is how I show up.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes overwhelmingly clear that this framework isn't just a sports psychology hack. It's a fundamental philosophy for life and leadership. Life is going to deliver hurricanes. You'll face professional crises, personal betrayals, and moments where the most natural biological response is to shrink, to build defensive walls, and to retreat to the safety of layer 1 or layer 2.
To wait for conditions to improve before you lead.
But true leadership, fueled by anchored belief, is not about toxic positivity. It's not ignoring the hurricane or pretending you aren't terrified. It's about allowing yourself to process the visceral fear, feeling the anxiety, and yet still making a conscious, identity-driven choice about how you will behave in the midst of it. You feel the emotion, but you refuse to let it dictate your action.
Your identity dictates the action.
That is the highest form of self-mastery, deciding who you are regardless of what the environment is demanding you to be.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Hatfield Still's work, I want to turn this directly over to you, the listener. The paper poses a profound self-audit, and it's really worth sitting with this week. What layer are you living in right now? Take a hard, unfiltered look at your career, your creative pursuits, or your relationships. Are you stuck at the surface level, repeating the right mantras, but freezing when the pressure hits?
Or are you trapped in the dependency of situational belief, feeling like a genius when things are easy, but collapsing into self-doubt at the first negative comment?
Right. Or are you doing the exhausting but necessary work of embodied belief, using borrowed scaffolding to take action when you don't feel ready? Or have you actually done the reps to reach that anchored layer where your gyroscope holds steady?
It's a challenging mirror to look into,
Mm.
but the ultimate value of mapping this architecture is recognizing how much agency you actually have. The text beautifully summarizes that the version of you that reaches your true potential,
The version that becomes genuinely formidable.
yes, formidable and free, that is the one who stops waiting for the magical feeling of readiness. It's the version of you that starts behaving like the belief is already true.
So what does this all mean? We started out by agreeing that just believe in yourself is a hollow cliche because it treats confidence as a magical toggle switch. We now know it is a layered architectural construct built through action. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on the mechanics we've explored today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If it is true that deep, anchored confidence can only be forged by taking action when you don't feel ready, if it requires acting specifically after your situational confidence has been shattered, doesn't that fundamentally rewrite our relationship with failure?
Oh, it completely flips the narrative on adversity.
Right. If the gyroscope is only built in the storm, does that mean our most embarrassing strikeouts, our public failures, and our moments of deepest, darkest self-doubt are actually the most valuable raw materials we possess? Think about the engineering of it. Without the strikeout, without the devastating failure, the anchor has absolutely nothing to test its weight against. You can't prove an anchor works in a perfectly calm, shallow sea.
You need the storm to prove the anchor holds. Without the friction, there is no growth.
You need the storm. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of confidence. We hope Hatfield Still's framework provides you with a new set of blueprints for your own challenges. Take a hard look at your layers this week, find some solid scaffolding to borrow if you need it, and maybe, just maybe, take that uncomfortable action long before you feel ready.
Until next time, keep examining the layers and keep building.
Take care, everyone.